Hey guys, I just finished up interviewing Brendan Leong of CapilliRoofing.com, co-host of CitizenDev.com, a great podcast for those of you looking to modernize in the construction and contracting space. I really think this interview went super deep and we covered a lot of conversations. If you're looking to get into the mind of an entrepreneur that's doing $45 million a year, below 30, you're going to really get excited by some of the innovative and inspiring things he has to say. I really hope you enjoy the episode. And if you have any more questions you'd like to ask Brendan, post them in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever it is around this video. Thank you. All right, Brendan, welcome to another episode of a podcast. We don't even know where we're going to post this yet, do we? Nope. So basically, the reason for this podcast was because after your interview with Dmitry, a lot of people messaged me, and I think he messaged you, and they had more questions, right? Mm-hmm. Dmitry did a fantastic job of kind of introducing you to the roofing industry. I think that, you're figuratively and literally on your own island out here. And I think that just sheer lack of proximity means that I don't think a lot of people get to see the incredible company that you've built. And so I got a list of a huge amount of questions here. There are some duplicates that I tried to weed out. So there's a lot of people who, if you're looking for your question, it's probably here or it's probably been asked in another way just by someone else. I tried to do it as best I can. And so we're going to kind of go through and do a deep dive, right? Mm-hmm. So I want you to just be completely honest, try and give a lot of value to the community of the industry, but also the business community locally, mm-hmm. and also to like roofers around. Like at the end of the day, you have total creative control, but I want you to feel totally comfortable answering all these questions. There's a lot. We're going to go for a marathon, but I think a lot of people are going to really enjoy it. Ready to get into it?
Yep.
Perfect. So some of the first questions that really I want to start around is like age, family, and friends, right? You've scaled your company to such incredible heights at such a young age. What keeps you getting out of bed every day, continuing to try and grow the company further?
I kind of just have to.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, yeah, it's like if you don't work, then what are you going to do?
I suppose, but couldn't you do something different? Or could you just lay off the pedal? Like, I guess this is prefaced with the fact that I know, mm-hmm. and some of the people asking these questions know that you give her 110% every single day. Like you're not laying off, you're not going and getting relaxed. What's keeping you hungry?
Well, I think the business isn't in a place where I'm completely out of a job. Mm-hmm. There's still a lot of things that I need to do to grow the team, and I'm not in a place where I can just lay off the gas. If I want to continue to put opportunity in front of our team, I'm going to have to get it to that place.
Yeah. What does that place look like?
The place looks like we have a full leadership team. It's being built, but the average age of our company is like 25 years old.
It's a bunch of children.
Yeah, so there's a lot of growing up for all of us to do. I think that their heads are in the right place, but it'll take time for experience. A lot of these guys have 2-3 years experience. I think it's going to take another 5-10 years, but mm-hmm. I do think that foreseeably I need to keep pushing, keep growing the company so that they can grow into the roles that they aspire to have.
Mm-hmm. That's a good answer. So I want to jump into something that is maybe a little bit funny. I want to get the funny question out of the way. Mm-hmm. Somebody who follows you on Instagram said, your first tattoo is roofing, and now you have a HubSpot tattoo. What is your next one? And why do you go with the thighs only?
I actually have 15 tattoos. But started off, got roofing as a joke. Then thought it was pretty fun. Got like one every Wednesday for the next, I don't know how many weeks. I thought HubSpot would be like a shocker because that's like an app. Mm-hmm. Haven't really thought about what the next one is, but I'm looking for a good idea if anyone has one.
Yeah, they give you suggestions in the comments of what his next tattoo should be. Careful giving anything to Brennan because he'll just show up and do it every Wednesday like everything else he does. So, and what about the thighs? Why is that the spot?
Because no one will ever see it because I never wear shorts.
Okay. There's a funny story about you not wearing shorts, but I'll save that for another episode from when I first met you. All right. So I want to jump into some stuff about family, right? Mm-hmm. And friends, right? It's a big component around here. Yep. Someone said like Gary Vee, and this is someone who knows you, so they know what you've put in. But I think that a lot of people, especially, and even this person, originally had this thought, right? Like Gary Vee took his wine store to from 3 to 30 million, and many people think it's his success is due to his dad or getting that opportunity from his dad. A lot of people say that Trump borrowed money from his dad, and that's why he's successful. And I'm always kind of like, if you take like the $8 million he got from his dad and show where he got by like 31, it's kind of like saying if your dad paid your cell phone bill for a year, if you have your house paid off in full by 31, it's like the same thing. You know what I mean? To be like, oh, your dad paid your cell phone bill for a year. You know, and so everybody kind of heard your response in the last video about how your dad, and he teaches you things, and the things that you know are because of things that he knows. So nothing can really discount what your dad did, Mike. But how are the feelings around nepotism, and, you know, how does that motivate you?
I mean, I already know that the default answer would be that, oh, it's because your dad got you there. Like, I know that that's the default response. So it makes me feel that I need to overcompensate by pushing harder. Because if I don't exceed and I just meet something, then the default answer is like, oh yeah, your dad got you there. Yeah.
So it just keeps you motivated.
Yeah.
Was there anything you remember being taught by your parents that played into the way that you run the company?
I think one big one is reputation and relationships. That's something that I think the business was built on, relationships and reputation. And it's something that if we forgot all other lessons, that would be the one that I hope sticks around.
Yeah. Is there any like wordplay that your dad taught you, or sayings? Like I know, like, you know, you've wrote down lots of quotes all over the place. So what is it like? Go back to like some of the early inspirations that your dad gave you, or things that you could hear his voice in your head.
Write it down.
Write it down.
Yeah.
What else?
Always do what's right, even if it's not profitable. Yeah.
What about things about leadership, like how you run the company, teach people, learn stuff like that?
I think nothing that comes to mind there. It's mainly how you carry yourself in the business space. Those are a lot of the lessons that I remember. Yeah.
I love one of the sayings that I've heard your dad say, and it's one of the ones that I actually pulled from working with you, right? Because everywhere I go, I kind of pick up something from someone. Like I think the things that helped me in my career is the collective hive brain, right? Like going around to all these places and picking up lessons. One of my favorite ones is that your dad says is, it's not your job to tell them.
It's your job to be sure.
Yeah, it's your job to be sure. And I really love that saying because it helped me in my business, because I would go around, and even in like my own companies or in my clients, I'd be like, you know, people, I came up with this name like Told You Roofing. Like I told you. Or I told him. And it's like, it's not your job to tell him. It's your job to make sure. And so I really love that saying about your dad. And he's a really, really smart guy. So this kind of shifts gears to family. You have a lot of classmates working with you, people that you went to school with, people that you played with as a child. What's it like to employ people that you used to ride at the skate park with and get kind of silly with?
I mean, it's like the same thing. I mean, when it's time to work, we just work, and then after work, we don't work. I think everyone knows clearly why they're here. It's not to bum a ride on, you know, everyone else's work. It's to contribute something that they can be proud of and that can build a better path for them. And we all do it together. So it's pretty fun.
Do you find that the friendship makes it easier or harder when it comes to like discipline, letting people go?
I think there's a higher level of trust because they know you're not just being, you know, unreasonable. So there's that, and you know that they have good intentions. So that's one less variable. Like there's no malice there, so that's good. So, I mean, there's a lot of people here that are friends before they came here, and there's people that came here and became friends. So it's not like, you know, like if you hire a friend, it'll automatically work out. If you don't hire a friend, it won't. I think that it's just a little further along in the relationship as an employee-employer type thing. Yeah.
Have you ever had to fire a friend?
Not fire, but they quit. Yeah. And I mean, we're still friends.
That was the next question I was going to ask. Is, are you still friends after people quit or leave or anything like that? Yeah. So let's switch gears into something a little less emotional, and let's start talking about technology. So one of the questions that came in was, how would you say the technology has impacted your year-over-year growth? I feel like I know the answer to this one, but I feel like the audience would love to hear.
Yeah, so I think technology has like one of the biggest impacts on the business and its performance over the last 5 years. I guess like it's a lot of enablement. Like you get better processes, things that otherwise wouldn't be feasible to do 10,000 times a year. Put together a workflow, and there you go.
Yeah. What do you think the impact of technology is for your employees?
I think that it provides them a better future because it upcycles the human time. No one wants to do a job that doesn't have purpose. Well, I don't think. And by giving them technology and a good platform to work off of, it allows them to contribute in a greater way and ultimately give them a better job.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I've noticed about you is that when you look at the business, you're constantly trying to, I think maybe because it's the young people, you're constantly trying to say, okay, you know how to do this now, let me automate it. And then now you have to learn how to do this higher level task because I took this off your plate. Is that something that you discovered or is that something that you designed?
I mean, I think that most things will get automated. And if I learn how to automate things, I mean, I don't need to wait for someone else to do it, you know?
Perfect. So one question that came in was, what was the hardest part about implementing HubSpot?
The fact that we did 75 hard and there was 24 inches or whatever of rain in 24 hours, that made it pretty tough.
What was the impact of that? Help people understand what is the impact of rolling out HubSpot, doing 75 hard, and the 24 inches of rain. How did that combine together? Like, what were you going through, or what were we going through? But put it in your lens.
Well, I think rolling out that tech stack just by itself would have been hard enough because there were business processes that changed. You know, we moved to inside outside sales. There was a lot of adjusting for our team to do. So that in itself was hard. And then the fact that we were physically fatigued from doing 75 hard and people were getting COVID.
So much trauma you start to forget.
Yeah. And all of these like variables, I think, just made it a lot harder. And then you add in the fact that like the phone doesn't stop ringing and we don't even know how to put a lead in yet. That made it pretty hard. But I think that if you get through something like that, then when it's not raining and you're not doing 75 hard and everyone's coming to work and not sick, I mean, it's way easier.
Yeah, Caleb Oberg tells the story about how to this day, the very first roof he ever did, it was like I can't remember, but when it sounds like something meant for prison inmates. But he talks about his first roof as if it was like terrible. He says every day after that was easier, and so I think I would agree because I mean we had people like you had people quitting, right? Like not that many, like one or two, but like those are still significant people. You know, they were significant to the operation when you weren't going through the transition. But no, that's really interesting that you would say that and not throw me under the bus. Thank God. Everybody's talking about AI now, right? And I was talking about conversational intelligence on my Facebook the other day, and how it's like kind of like an AI element in that it can hear text, pick out terms, flag them for review, stuff like that. What do you think is going to be HubSpot's next AI evolution, and how do you think, or how do you hope that AI could have changed your business?
I think that I mean, I've been looking into like the development of like machine learning and how that'll be democratized to, you know, the everyday tech user. And Zapier had this cool machine learning thing that kind of like routes leads. And I think that because there's HubDB and there's a big database that HubSpot has for the business, I think machine learning and like things that have wider sets of variables than a workflow may address I mean, that would probably be the thing that they'll give us some basic function with, I think.
So that's an important thing. So you understand workflows really well at this point, right? What do you see as like the limitation of a workflow, and what are you hoping comes out?
There's a level of context and human, like
Randomness.
yeah, that you can't have 300 branch conditions on,
Right.
you know, and I think that that's where machine learning and artificial intelligence will need to develop to be able to address those conditions, I think.
I think what you're saying sounds really cool. And so what I hear you saying is like 300 branch conditions. So if you're trying to pick out, say, words, right? Like the track terms. So you're trying to say that if an email came in, AI, read this email and give me the sentiment of this email.
Yeah, like customer sentiment and, you know, like maybe a lead form comes in and you could have a drop down that says like, oh, I want this service, or this service. But how do we get context from like their actual like form submittal?
Yeah. Like even the time at night, like why are they thinking about it at night? Was it raining? How could you add the context of weather?
Yeah.
So you could determine that, is this after hours lead really one for the after hours lead response? Or is this something that should actually go to like an emergency response team? But because you'd have that intelligence, you could not have to have somebody maybe 24 hours. You just have to have somebody on call or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like that's like a ways away, but I mean, I think that basic machine learning type things are going to enter SaaS products. And just like AI, I mean, like we're just prompting like questions right now. Like,
Yeah, we're just asking it to write our homework.
yeah.
Right?
But
as a business owner, your homework is a blog, and as a student, your business owner is a blog, or your homework is an essay.
But in like 10 years, like that'll be like, you know, crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Like iPhone 1, you were lucky that you were able to like browse a mobile version website.
Yeah.
And now it's like you can hold your phone up to a scooter and rent it and drive it around, and knows where you are, automatically bill your credit card. What does the iPhone version of AI look like in our business, and how is it affected? In your preparation for this, you've been posting a lot on Facebook lately, workflows, code, tray, like looking at different kind of stuff like this. Why is it that you're like, explain to a roofing business owner or even any kind of industry business owner who's out there, why are you looking to code and learn how to code? Like why would you invest the time and energy into that?
So that I understand what questions to ask. Because if I think there's a disconnect between like service businesses and technology, because a lot of people who come from the service space actually provided the service. And then people in the tech space don't normally think like, they're looking for like MVP, widest, broadest base of users, like that kind of thing. Whereas like construction always seems to get left out.
Yeah.
Is what I feel.
I feel like, our industry is like kind of appeals to the lowest common denominator. How do we make a SaaS product with a total addressable market of every roofer or every painter? And then they make a good enough product for like a winner get most market. And then you get watered down feature sets, essentially just derived from the requests that come from this huge market. And I think that what you said has a little bit of genius to it.
Yeah, I mean, like that's the idea is like if I can't find products that will do the job, then it's like, we get best in class tech stack and we understand how to build it in a way that suits our business the best. Yeah.
So what is the thing that you're hoping, what is something that, like, give an insight for those out there who are like thinking that you're a gate, like what you're thinking was a gateway to the future, right? Because a lot of people don't, or just haven't had the opportunity to think about this stuff yet. They're in their business. Like there's a $1 million, $5 million, and $10 million roofer out there watching this going, I'm not even in the position to even start thinking about this because I'm just fighting the fight every day. What do you think is coming down the pipe in your business that will probably become ubiquitous, right? Or might be a thing that every roofer is going to want in 2 years?
Well, I think everyone, like when you go on Facebook, it's like, what's the best CRM? What's the best CRM? It's like everyone is looking at like sales, marketing. There's like, I get like 10 messages a day of like, we do Facebook, like stuff like that. Like we'll get you leads. Like there's a lot of that right now. But then I think that as configured price quote and things like that make it easier to sell, then people have a surplus of customers, and then they're going to figure out like, how do I get these jobs done? And I think that's where operational efficiencies are going to become a thing that people actually start thinking about more. You know, like it's not, how do I get $2 off of my bundle of shingles? You know, like that's not what I mean by operational efficiency. I think it's like, how are the frameworks and infrastructure built to reduce friction through the whole process and shift the unit economics of everything. Yeah.
So I love this, and I could talk about this all day, but I don't want this to be a thing about the stuff that I sell and do. But I want to, so I want to transfer it a little bit to leadership, because I think that, I think there's a big gap in generations where in today's world, we almost tear down our leaders. Like the minute someone makes it, we want to go find out, what did he do wrong? How did he get, how did he con his way into that? And then they go look at like pictures from when he was 15 and be like, see, he touched a girl, or like, see, he, was a party, or he was a drinker, or he did drugs, or, he only inhaled, but he still did smoke the weed. Right? Now we're going to get canceled on YouTube on our first show. But, people want to tear people down. Right? And I think that it makes people afraid to be leaders. I think like it makes people afraid to be bold. Right? And at the end of the day, any organization is going to benefit from great leadership. And so I think feedback is a critical component to a young CEO like yourself, having been able to grow at the pace that you've grown. Both you've had the examples of good leadership from the people that you've worked with, but then as you started to take control, feedback up and down the chain of command is I think critical to the company culture, the viability of the business, the productivity of the employees. What type of systems do you have in place that allows the employees to give you that critical feedback?
Well, I share an office with like 5 other guys, our estimating team. I think that a very flat hierarchy is important because it allows for speed. And
what do you mean by wisdom begins with the definition of terms? What's flat hierarchy mean to you?
There's not like a CEO and then a general manager and then a middle manager and then another manager for the other manager. Like we don't have that.
But it looks so good when you're at the top of this big triangle.
It only looks good. It doesn't perform well.
That's how we measure it.
Yeah,
is in the performance. I think that when you say you share an office with 5 other guys, I want to make things clear. When give people the context. So when you and I first met, you were in a 1,200 square foot office. We went and looked at it the other day. It's from the new people who took it over.
Yep.
It looks like a garage. Like it's like a 3-car garage.
Smaller than my house.
Right.
Yeah.
And you built that company up into the 8-figure mark in that office. And I remember when I used to come, poor Jarek, when I showed up, had to sit on a bucket because there was no chairs left. And you would give me a chair and a desk. And then poor Jarek was now sitting on a bucket with his laptop doing his drone stuff, right? Or whatever he was doing at that time, photos and stuff. And when you moved to the new office, something felt wrong. And remember the day that we were like, everybody's too separated. And we just like condensed the building.
Yep. So I think that like when you come from a place where whatever you say, the rest of the team hears, and even if you don't want to hear it, like you're going to hear your sales guy's conversation and you're going to hear whatever, like what's for lunch.
Yeah.
And then we move into this building and, everyone's got their own office and it's the communication delay increases. And yeah, I remember we moved everyone, like we had half of the office not used. But we created it in a way that there was communication.
Yeah. Like you started smushing people together.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it felt like old Capilli again.
Yeah.
Like it felt like there was just vibes going back and forth.
Yeah.
So the feedback comes from proximity.
I think proximity and like knowing that they can just like say something. Like if there's something going on, like bring it up.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So how do you decide when you need another person? What is the decision-making framework around that?
Well, I look at it from like a revenue per capita standpoint, like with each hire, I want to improve that. So, like sales guys, it's pretty easy because as long as they're producing a certain amount, they're increasing that. But then there's going to be everything else, which is like back office. And I think at certain skills, further specialization is required. Like we used to have one bookkeeper, and then now we have a bookkeeper, contract specialist, a purchaser, AP. Like we have a team that handles this stuff, but it's always grown in line with our revenue growth. Because I think if we aren't mindful of that, then we start to hit diseconomies of scale, right? Whereas we want to become more efficient, and we want fixed costs to be a lower percentage of our top line. So, yeah.
So when you're looking at it from the revenue per capita standpoint, and for those who are listening, who just maybe haven't heard that term before, it's the amount of revenue that your company is generating divided by the number of people that aren't putting nails through shingles.
Yeah.
Safe, right? So give an idea into that, because like what this really looks like in a roofing company is like you have people who are doing things, now they're getting busy, now they're starting to make mistakes, right? And then you kind of go down, you either start creeping up in revenue per capita, but then you have people doing multiple jobs, which increases error rate, or you start throwing people at problems, but then the revenue per capita goes down, and there's a lack of systems, right? And somewhere when you're like, this is not something that's like binary, like it's constantly on a continuum. So what does it look like? How do you start recognizing the need for another person, and how do you go down a decision-making path of like, is this a system or process? Can I give this job to someone else? Do I need to change the person and fire this person because they're not good enough? Or do I just need to get another person, or do I need to put a system in place? Like, how do you rank order those decisions?
So I'm always looking at like what our 30-day rolling sales are, our 30-day projected revenues are. So I kind of have a good idea of like, if we forecast this out 12 months, what does our 1 year look like? And then from there, it's like, do I think that we can sustain that volume into the future? Because I never want to go backwards. That's like the biggest fear. But I kind of use that as like the broader guidepost, and then work backwards. So it's like, can this be automated? Like, should it be automated? Like looking at those sorts of things, like putting together a residential invoice, right? Like, yeah, we just automate that out, and then that kind of opens up capacity to upcycle that person's time to something greater.
And that wasn't the case for a long time, right? Like that's a just this year thing, using Tray, right? So you don't have to automate invoicing at 6 million.
Yeah. I mean, how many invoices are you going to make a year, and is it worth that licensing fee for the workflow? At certain scales, certain things become like they make more sense, but at a smaller scale, it may be cost prohibitive. So I think just quantifying like it from that standpoint is something I'm always looking at. Like, at what size do we need to specialize this role? And how can I piece that together in a way that creates the best efficiency? Yeah.
I think that's a skill that you've cultivated over years, right? Because it's something that you've progressively gotten more in. I think, your revenue per capita shows, right? Like you're off the charts of industry average. And so I think that makes sense that you've grown that skill over time. So then, and I think that everybody in the company is lucky to have a leader like that, because generating a good revenue per person, right, means that ultimately you're putting more money in the hands of roofers, you're better capitalizing projects, you're better securing yourself against the future. Like somebody asked me, what makes the difference between good leaders, and what do you think was your personal differentiator that allowed you to do this if you're being introspective? And I know you're humble, but
I just think like I could be turning off roofs. And it's like, if I'm not working harder and longer than those guys, then that's just not cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get the benefit of seeing both calm, cool, collected, Brennan, and I also get the chance to see, the under the water duck feet going like this, Brennan.
Yeah.
And I see both. And a lot of people only see the calm, cool, collected Brennan, right? What helps you stay so calm and collected?
I had this question one day, and I asked my dad. I was like, "How did Uncle David do this for 40 years? He's been roofing. He's been a contractor since 1980. I was in like year 1 or 2, of taking operations over and everything. And he said like he doesn't let things bother him. He's like very stoic about things. He said that the building could be burning down, and what are you gonna do?
That's funny because I remember you and me were trading Daily Stoic pages back and forth. I think didn't I get you that book, or did you?
I don't remember, but
I know I got you a book. I don't remember which one.
Yeah, it was in Why. You got me this like Seth Godin's book.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's like the Daily Stoic is like a big one, and like seeing a firsthand experience of 40 years later that he's still, he's in his 70s and he's still able to like keep it together and do business. It's like, I don't want to burn out in 5 years. So pick the battles, I guess.
So that kind of leads into the next one, which was like, where did you find the strength to do that? Because it's like, oh yeah, don't let it bother you. Building's burning down. Like, sure. Where did you find that strength? Like, what were the sources of it? Was it books like the Daily Stoic? Was there something else? Was there a certain amount of financial security that you had, like a natural happiness set point? Like, where do you find your strength to just not let the building burning down bother you?
It's really just reading things about stoicism. I mean, those are like, I used to freak out about a lot of stuff. Like, then you realize like you're just burning energy. And when you start to realize you don't have infinite energy, then you pick what you're going to use it on. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. So let's get into a controversial topic. Money and inequality is a huge topic in the industry. A lot of people say that roofers don't make money, owners do, and I don't find that to be true. Tell me about, like, you have roofers that have been working here for, many years and they haven't retired yet. Explain how that is. Explain how that works.
If you're providing good opportunities, we pay more than, we have more consistent work and we pay more than the average here. And I think that already in itself, the alternative is that they could work for a company that didn't do that. I think that's one aspect of it. But I also think that there's guys here that don't want to go. Like
Pops.
Pops has a house in Hawaii. It's paid off. He rides his bike every Sunday. He, even on the weekends, he does like framing with someone. I don't know, but he does that kind of stuff. And every year he tells me this is his last year and he wants to retire. And I'm like, okay. But then he never does.
So there's no suppression from the evil Brennan overlord that's making peeping people down.
I'd hope not.
No, I don't think so either. It was actually interesting because, and this is kind of a good story, when we first rolled out the inside-outside sales, there was an outside field worker that I thought, was like, man, he'd be good at this. Like, I think he'd like this. And we were trying to solve the fact that people were quitting, and it was COVID, and it was the storm and the leads and just all this stuff. And we hadn't hosted the hiring fair yet. And I was like, I think that guy would be good. We should get him in here. And I asked him, and he's like, no, I kind of like doing what I do. I like working outside, and I like, it's fun, and I like staying active and stay moving. And you and I had a conversation, I don't know, within the month that I've been here, about talking about how it's not like that we have this, I have this leader's guilt of like, oh, those guys are working so hard on the sun. I got to outwork them, but it's so hard to say I'm outworking them. And then they don't even want to come in.
Yeah. I think like we view like outside work, that's terrible. And inside work, that's lazy. And, I need to save these guys and bring them in the office. But it's like, you go ask Braden, right? You go ask my brother, what does he like to do better? He has to be in the office, right? Because that's what, that's what the business needs. And that's what right now is what he's doing, right? But he would much rather go be a foreman.
And what's he doing right now this minute?
He's on the roof on Saturday.
Teaching guys.
Yeah.
Right? And that brings up another cool topic. It's not on the list of questions, but I think that this would be an interesting one for the roofing industry here. You have a very nonchalant, and you're all self-performed work. So your workers are literally your like capacity, right?
Yep.
Their energy is your capacity. But you have the most nonchalant view about side jobs. You don't stop them. You've let them use or rent or in some way use tools. I don't know if you want to talk about this, but you have the most nonchalant attitude about it. I just feel like it would be a great thing to tell the rest of the people out there.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it is like if a homeowner is looking for a side job, they're not our customer. If they're looking for the cheapest product, they're not our customer. The customer would actually be better off having our roofer put it on than someone else, because at least they're going to get a good installation. So on that front, you know, like they may not get the warranty, they may not get the best product, they may not get the oversight and the risk management, but at least they're getting a good roof. And for our employees, you know, if we weren't going to get the job anyway, they might as well make some money off of it. I mean, Hawaii is a hard place to survive, and if these guys are willing to put in the work on a Saturday and a Sunday to earn some extra cash for their family, like, what's the problem?
You know, I don't want to disagree with you. I think it makes sense, but I don't think it's actually that hard to survive in Hawaii. I mean, homeless people get shipped here because they can survive literally outside, right? And the government takes care of them. I mean, the rentals here are a couple $100 more. I mean, I'm moving here and the place I'm renting, I mean, I'm paying the same that I'd pay in anywhere else that has like the sunshine tax of good living. Is it as cheap as like Ohio? Sure. But I mean, the rates, right? The economy, like the amount of available work. I mean, the wages that you pay. I mean, question yes or no. Do you have a roofer here making over $100,000 a year?
Couple.
Okay. So like, I don't think it's that hard to survive here. What makes you think it's hard to survive here?
Well, I mean, I just compare it to places where like you can buy a $300,000 house.
Yeah, but you get $300,000 wage there too. You know what I mean? Like a wage relevant to that.
Yeah, I guess there's like a lot of statistics, right, where it's like Hawaii is like the worst place to retire, and this is how many years $1 million will take you, like stuff like that. But I mean, day to day, yeah, you're right.
Maybe if you come here with $1 million and you want to burn it off in your retirement, this ain't the place. Like you should probably go to Arizona.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But I think that if you're a skilled tradesman, I mean, year-round work, good wages, right? So, and that kind of leads into my other question, right? So, talking about retirement, talking about pops, not wanting to retire. This is kind of an epidemic in the working class. They're living paycheck to paycheck. They don't have a clear way to value up their skill set, and they're not making a plan for the future. As a leader, I know that you take this as somewhat of a responsibility. So, like, what do you do, or what are you doing to fix that problem?
So I think that, you know, we do like profit sharing at the end of the year. We have like savings accounts that can do like, you know, like they'll get their direct deposit, there's a deduction, and part of that goes into their savings, and at least then they're like saving money for certain things. And we have a 401k match, and I really try to like tell them like just at least do the minimum, because like you're getting 100% return. Like there's nowhere you can do that.
Yeah. Like where do you double your money besides Bitcoin in 2019?
Yeah. So like we have those sorts of things, and we have government work, and that in itself comes with like 20% into your retirement per hour, right? So it'll add up. It's almost like if you work there for a full year, it's like maxing your 401k. Like you're gonna end up with about 20 grand in there.
So you're creating the kind of work environment that allows that. What is a profit match? Like I know you can't talk exact numbers, but like what is or a profit share? What is that? Like what does it look like for a roofing company?
So
like is it a structured thing, or is it just something where you're just like
no. It's so it's a discretionary profit sharing plan. You need like a third party administrator to put it together for you. And over a certain number of participants, there need to be like plan audits and stuff like that. So at the end of the year, like we'll take a percentage of their wages that they've earned, and there will be classes, right? So like foremans will get one, and then like laborers will get one, and journeymen and stuff like that. Like there will be a class, and then that will determine the percentage that they receive.
Mm-hmm.
It's a discretionary thing, but we've done it every year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like we have to do it.
Every year since when?
3 years.
3 years. So that was basically when you started breaking past like 9, 10 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you find that it helps with retention?
Unfortunately not,
No.
because most people don't care about it. And I think that's the second component, which is like education, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have like banks like that will come here
Mm-hmm.
and kind of just do like employee education, like during our safety meetings and stuff.
Right.
And I'm talking to one of our realtors. He wants to do like kind of like teach them what it takes to get a mortgage and like how to qualify, so that they can start to set goals versus just looking forward to Friday kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, like John Maxwell talks about one of his books about how, your vision has to continue to expand to allow for the size of the vision of the people who are in your employ, and that by making their personal and professional goals a part of what your goals are, that you're going to help them rise up. And I think that every roofer out there wants the American dream. They want to own a home. They want to be financially secure. Someday they want to know that their work resulted in something. And I don't believe we can rely on the government for that, right? I think pensions and government assistance is a joke. And so by creating that environment, I really hope that more of your team and more people out there get educated on the fact that employers can create this kind of opportunity as a way to shift the invisible hand of capitalism in their direction and push them the install capacity that allows them to earn more work. So let's move in and talking about sales and stories and strategy. Tell the world in one sentence what a properly trained inside, outside, the customer success reps and field techs, tell the world what impact that can have on your business.
I think it's a huge multiple of efficiency over the traditional estimating model. And it's a shorter training period too. So your expansion speed goes up, your processing speed goes up, functioning speed, everything gets better when you specialize the roles.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so I think it can give a better experience for the customer.
Yeah.
Right. And one of my next questions was someone who's been reading the book Shoe Dog. I don't know if you've read it.
No.
Really cool book. But anyway, so he is asking a question, and when he said it, I said, "You've been reading Shoe Dog," and he's like, "You know it." And so he's been thinking a little bit about enhanced buying experiences. So like, remember when Dmitry came out here, he had the shoes that had his name written on it. He got to customize his product. So I would ask, what's an example of a great experience that you've had with a brand? And could you share us that story and kind of how maybe it might have affected you in your business?
I actually like to watch a lot of things, and like I like to go to restaurants or like go to stores or like buy things online, just to see how people are selling it. I like to do that because like, roofing hasn't evolved much at all. And yeah, like what things can you take from other industries to enhance the buying experience? Like that's something I really like. And I mean, the easy answer would be like the Amazon roofing experience, right? But I think that over time, like having that rep and that relationship, like a customer success role is going to be more important. It's a big thing in tech, but I think in home services, that's going to become more important, where it's like less sales focused and more customer success driven.
Yeah. I mean, I can think of several times that you and I, ironically, you found a way to better manage your production management system by giving an experience that was like the DMV with the ticket, remember?
Yeah.
But it worked, right? Like you created the service level objectives, and then you created the automated messages that went out that let them know like where they were at in line. And feedback scores went up. And then you also had your experience with the bank where you had your guy, right? And so I think that you do take a lot of that kind of stuff out of the experiences that you have in your life. All right. So finance, marketing, HR, sales, operations. What part of your company do you feel makes the biggest impact on your overall growth? And what department do you think gives you the growth that outpaces the market?
I mean, like our close rate is average. Our marketing is kind of hands off. I think it's really the accounting and the numbers like understanding those things keep you consistent, because like we were talking about it, right? Like if you're doing 200,000 in a month and then you're doing like 50,000 the next month, and then you're doing, like there's no consistency in cash flows and you don't understand your numbers. And look at it from the bank standpoint, like would they deem you
Worthy.
yeah. Like if they're concerned, like maybe you should be concerned, right? Because you guys are on the same like team.
Yeah, really, if your bank and you are together, your interests should be aligned.
Yeah. And if
Yeah.
they're looking for cash flows, like, and you ain't got cash flows, then maybe you got to figure out how to like streamline that.
So that brings me to literally the next question on here. And this is the one question that I actually put on this list, which, I mean, you were talking the other day about how residential is at a 6-month backlog. Commercial is at a 12-month backlog. How do you justify such a large backlog?
Yeah, because we were talking about that, and you're looking at it from the standpoint of we're losing potential sales,
Yeah.
right? But I'm looking at that as like, okay, well, what's my burn rate right now? Our production run rate is like 3.3 million or something right now, but our 30-day sales is below that. So I know that eventually we're going to eat through that backlog.
Right.
Unless we get the signal that the changes that we made to our system this last go around swings the sales in the other direction.
Right.
And granted, it's first quarter and we just came off a holiday season, so we probably had, 2 dead weeks.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for that signal that there is a surplus in jobs sold, right? Like there's buying pressure here.
Yeah.
And that justifies needing to scale. Yeah, it's 12 months or 6 months or whatever, but I'm thinking 40 years, right?
Yeah.
If I have one hiccup here and I lose a good foreman, that affects us indefinitely.
Right.
Yeah.
Explain more about that. Because you're looking at this about 40 years, and you said in Dmitry's interview, if you couldn't hire someone for 40 years and you don't want to give them a job, like you literally look at this as a place for people to build up a retirement and be done. And you want to retire roofers. As you start to ramp up for the season, you start looking at a way to try and continue to keep that backlog way out there, because you're not thinking about the stress today. You're like, the production team will always be overrun. They'll always be like that. You know what I mean? The sales team will always be, we can't get, if it was 2 months, they'd be complaining. If it was 1 month, they'd be complaining. It doesn't matter when it is. You have to either tell the production managers to chill out and they're going to have to move people around. You're going to have to tell the sales team that they're going to have to convince, the customer to wait. But you will always have this problem. But your thing was about how can you create the long-term security?
Yeah. Needing to temper the customer's expectations, that's customer success's job. Needing to make accommodations for a date, that's production management's job. It's like, it's not a problem to solve. It's something it's a dichotomy to be managed, right? Like there's always going to be some degree of that these roles need to do. Like that's part of the job. But what's worse is if we eat through the backlog and now they don't have jobs, right? Like that's the thing I think about. Like,
You never want to lay someone off.
no.
Yeah.
No.
And then you just want to create this like employee retention thing, because you talk about trying to, when you try to recruit, right? People will say, I've worked here and they've always had work. But you've seen the alternative as well.
Yeah. I mean, how do we create like the place where it's like, like this is the gold standard of like work security? Like there will be people who roll in here in Hawaii, right? Like they'll hire a bunch of people. Like, I don't know what the arrangement is. They'll have like 2 months of work and the next thing you know, they're gone.
Yeah. They come in here and they just grip after a storm or something.
Yeah. And it leaves the roofer no better off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the lens you look at through that. How do you prepare for like major industry or major economy or major company changes, like major change? How do you prepare for it?
I'm always thinking and forecasting. I mean, every month I review our stats, company stats. Quarterly, I'm thinking like balance sheet type things, like how are we managing our risk here? What moves do we need to make? And yeah, just kind of keeping a pulse on what's happening economically, and is it applicable to us, right? Like tech layoffs right now, they're a thing, but like Hawaii doesn't really feel that much right now. I mean, will we? We'll see, but it's something to consider, right? Like, how does the news affect us, and to what extent, and how should we prepare?
Perfect.
Yeah.
So we learn a lot from failure, right? What's an example of a significant failure that you experienced, and like, how did you overcome it? What strength did you derive from overcoming it?
I fail all the time, so I don't really like.
You fail all the time. Is there a big one? The one that pops in your head and then you wonder if you should even share it?
No, I just think like shit happens.
So this is all going back to that calming down thing. No problem. Have you ever had to give somebody their money back?
All the time.
All the time.
I mean, yeah. I mean, even if we didn't need to, it's like we'd rather give you your money back than you be unhappy, and yeah. It's never like we were forced to.
I remember when I first met you, it was just like, yeah, they don't pay us. And that was like one of the first times a roofer ever shared with me, because sometimes people don't share, right? Yeah. And you're like, yeah, they didn't pay us. And I was like, what? I was like, why don't you do that? It was like, it's a line on our balance sheet, or you're like, it's you account for it. You account for bad debt just to happen.
Yeah, it's part of the budget. It's like, so does like Target, right? Like Target has a lost product, and that's part of the cost of doing business, and it's not worth fighting over. Yeah. So like after a certain extent, it's like you're already underwater with the time you spent trying to chase down this receivable.
So I got a really interesting question from a woman in business. She talked a lot about how there's essentials. As the business grows, you don't get to see as much of the day-to-day. And also the essentials are kind of like the most important tools. And she put it in a position of like how women give birth here. And so she has this friend who's a nurse, and she talks about like when they give birth, they've got like all these tools and machines and every different size of possible thing that you could possibly need, and all these, chemicals and shots, and everything's prepared. And her friend that was a nurse also did Doctors Without Borders, and she was delivering babies in other places where they give her like a paper clip, scissors, and like 2 gauzes, right? And they still deliver a baby. So what do you think are the essentials that you need to keep control of or watch over, or the tools you still need access to as the company grows to stay aware of what's going on and still deliver a great result, quality roofing, good customer and employee experiences, stuff like that?
I guess that depends like on the organization themselves, right? Like, because I do a lot of like the data administration and a lot of the accounting stuff. So I stay really in tune there. But I also, I look at our CS scores, our NPS scores. I look at lead volume and just a few indicators. I don't know every customer, but I do see the CS scores. Like, I don't know where the job sites are going to be today, but I know how much we completed this week. Yeah, just making sure that like customer sentiment's good, sales opportunities are good, we're actually selling them, profitability is good. I think the team kind of is growing into the point where they should know what their indicators are, and like you should set them for the team.
So you set the goals for the team, and how do you go about doing that?
I mean, they say money talks, and you tie their compensation, their variable compensation to the efforts that you want.
Yeah, show me the incentives, show you the outcomes.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is your, and I know the answer to this, so it feels weird asking these questions, but everybody always, like one of the questions that got asked all the time is like, how do you regularly meet with the team? Again, I know the answer because I'm there, but describe to everybody what your leadership meeting cadence looks like and what you do.
Yeah, so we do traction with the leadership team. That's, I mean, a core thing. But throughout the day, I kind of just say what's up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And regular communication.
Yeah.
So you just follow the level 10 traction meeting from the book, and that's just, you feel like that works.
I mean, it's not exactly by the book, right? Like we're going to have, because we're trying to build a leadership team, I want the people in that meeting to lead the meeting. Like we're going to rotate and they're going to lead the meeting. To me, I think everyone has to have some degree of like leadership. And I think for the most part, trying to build that in everyone. Yeah.
Leadership development, that one of those core quadrants. What is the summary of your rocks for this year?
It's basically like an education roadmap. Like, like whatever your job pertains to, taking courses or reading books about that thing. So it's like for our contract specialists, right? Like reviewing construction contracts, another course about contracts, risk management, like stuff like that.
You're paying for these?
Yeah.
So you're paying for the education of your team?
Yeah.
So it's like you're not hiring people with a degree. You're hiring people without a degree, letting them be responsible for your company and paying for their training?
Yeah. I mean, some of them have degrees, but it's not for the thing that they're doing. And or it is, right? But I think that continued education is like the thing. Like once you stop learning, then it's like you stop learning new tricks to.
What do you say to the roofing business owner out there who says, I don't want to hire someone, have to pay for them to get trained and have to wait for them to get trained. I'm just going to hire someone who's trained.
Good luck.
So I want to talk a little bit about vision, right? There's a couple questions in there that overlap a bit, the toughest decision, toughest thing. And I think you are really just stoic. I mean, I can think of 1,000 punches you've taken in the face. I've stood there beside you as you've taken them. And really you just like learn, don't do that again.
Yeah.
I think that for everybody out there who's looking for some kind of like lesson from failure, it's just like, don't do that again.
Yeah. It's like, that's kind of like the culture here is like, it's okay to make mistakes, but don't make it twice. Like just learn.
Yeah. Just learn and get better. So then let's talk a little bit about, this was a really good question that came in from someone I really respect. Do you feel you're successful because you have a clear vision of the future, or do you not pay attention to the future and stay hyper-focused on the present and making decisions?
Well, for one, I don't really like view myself as like successful. I'm just like chasing what I want to do. So I'm always thinking forward 10 years, 20 years as like the direction. And then I like to work backwards from there. Like, if this is my goal, like this is what the balance sheet should look like, this is what the P&L should look like. That means that, this is how much we need to do on these months, and how would I get there? Like how much more people, what infrastructure do I need? Is this the right time to do that thing? So yeah, I like to use the longer string thing for like direction really, but aside from that, then it's just like working backwards and trying to build all the little pieces, I guess. Yeah.
So how far do you want to go? Is it more islands? Is it even further? Like because you don't view yourself as successful, and and humility is such a big part of business. I can't agree with you more on that, but then that implies that you're not done. So then therefore, when will you be?
Well, I think there's still a lot of opportunity here in the islands to continue to scale. We're only on the main island. I want to get to every island, and we're working on the Kauai thing in March, and Big Island and Maui. But the market caps there are a lot smaller. Population is a lot smaller. I mean, doesn't mean that we can't see positive growth. I mean, we will. So those are like some things in like, the 1 to 3 year range. But as far as like bigger picture, I think it's just, I know that if I continue learning things, that I'll have the next thing to chase. Right now, it's like I'm in a gap where the past 10 years I knew what my goal was, and now I'm kind of just planning the next 10-year giant thing, and I have an idea of what it's going to be, but haven't really carved out like the how and stuff. Yeah.
I think that that's an interesting point, and because you had the inception of the company, you had the point where you took over. At what point did you feel confident that you had at least some semblance of traction, right? And feeling like, okay, we're not going to go bankrupt. We're not going to go backwards. Or at least the risk was mitigated. At what point did you feel that? Like, was it a revenue number? A people number?
I still always feel that.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a healthy fear and skepticism that, you can't just rest and get sloppy with your numbers.
I would hate to compete against you.
Why?
Because you never, because a lot of owners, right? The people who ask these kinds of questions, they're like, man, this is tough. When does it get easier?
Doesn't.
And you don't feel like it's gotten more secure or safe?
If the top line goes up, so does your COGS.
Yeah. So I guess that's it. Just keep hustling, bro. That's your answer. It's never going to get easier. You just, every level, I like that saying, every level has a different devil. That's probably pretty much the answer. This one's kind of hits me close to the heart. And I think that's the recent news. I don't want to memorialize it forever, but it makes us think about this kind of thing. If you passed away tomorrow, do you have any regrets? The amount you've worked?
No. It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the only regret would be not being able to complete the things I wanted to complete. But I'm actively trying to complete them. And it's kind of just a given that you don't know when you're going to go. But as long as you're heading in the direction you want to go, then yeah, I mean, Steve Jobs wasn't here for the iPhone 14 or whatever, but he launched the iPhone.
Yeah.
Right?
Left a dent in the universe.
Yeah.
Stay hungry, stay foolish.
Yeah.
It's like your favorite speech, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the spirit of decision making, right, and choosing to do things that you won't regret if today was your day, where do you get your mental models for decision making? So if I want to go be like Brennan, where would I go?
I think it's reading a lot. I like to read, when I was younger, I used to read a lot of Seeking Alpha, Motley Fool, those stock things and it wasn't about the stock. It was about the writer. Understanding how the writer analyzed this thing was something that was more interesting than analyze the stock itself, because really it's if there was any one analyst that was 100% right, then it's then just go read his thing and everybody else would be out of business. But
right.
So it's there's a level of uncertainty on the stock, but you can see the frameworks that he's thinking through this thing in by the way he's writing it. So that's one thing, is I always like to think where the author or the content creator is coming from, and then try to understand the frameworks there. Also learning about topics that are interesting, I guess. I really like accounting, real estate, stock, crypto, technology, that kind of stuff. So if you're not interested in it, then I'm not interested in cooking. Most things, sports, I don't know anything about it.
Do you have any vulnerabilities, or are you the perfect businessman with your level of interest and skills? And where are you the perfect businessman mindset, or is there any vulnerabilities that you see?
No, I think I overthink tremendously. And I mean, my disc type, they say that's one of the weaknesses, right? Is that you'll hesitate to make decisions. I remember Dmitry saying I never hesitate, he was saying that, and I'm sitting here oh shit, I do.
Right. Because there's a lot of people out there who are going to go, I could never be Brennan. I'm not an accounting mindset. When I was 20, I wasn't reading Seeking Alpha. I was up on a roof or out selling roofs or doing something completely different. And it's I wonder if someone I'm watching this, if they felt disillusioned, if they felt I could never measure up, what would be a thing that you would like to work on so that it shows a glitch in the armor where you're you know what, there's a dent here and this is something I'd like to get better at?
I think pacing myself
Mm-hmm.
is a big one, because there will be points where I'm actually slipping backwards, like the chiropractor thing today, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I went like 6 weeks,
Yeah.
folded in half.
Yeah. We were like, you were the most fatigued I've ever seen you.
Yeah,
Like usually we're running and gunning. This time we were a little bit
yeah,
lower. And then, yeah, you like last night we were up to like 11:30 talking about the rocket boosters and the fuel and
yeah.
all this cool shit. And I was like, where was this Brennan 2 weeks ago?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of it, is like, taking better care of the hardware.
Mm.
Yeah,
That's something I got to work on too. And it fatigues me and I feel guilt over it all the time. Because on one hand, I'm like, I gotta get this done. I got clients who expect stuff. I got employees who need me. I got my wife. I got travel, my dog, staying on time frames. And that in your health so often just seems to be like the thing, like, I'll do that later.
yeah. I mean, like, but then we look at like the 80% that I was able to output versus 100% for this past 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like I really only spent an hour to drive to the doctors and back, and while I was getting adjusted, I was like, oh, I should have did this earlier.
No shit.
And the lady was just laughing at me, and I was like, yeah, I thought I didn't have time for it, but yeah, I'm coming back.
No kidding. You got to make time. There it is.
Yeah.
The secret, folks. Chiropractor. So what is an idea that or a belief that you hold to be true that others frequently disagree with?
I mean, that's a hard one. I think that anybody can do anything they want to do. And me and Braden have this argument all the time,
Mm-hmm.
that he will take a, more of a realist or a pessimistic approach to an employee.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll say like, no, this guy just can't do it, or, something. But then I tell him like, well, what have you tried
Mm-hmm.
to get him there, right? And I've never. I mean, I've fired like all of 2 people ever.
Mm-hmm.
Because I will always wait and try every single thing because I believe this person can do it. Like, I don't.
If they get it, want it, you
Yeah.
believe they should probably have the capacity to do it.
Yeah, I don't like to think that people don't have the capacity. I think for yourself and for others, it's like that's something that I found that that I believe to be true. That maybe.
I personally feel struggle to not disagree with you, right? Like I'm sitting here going, I don't know, Bren. Like there's just some people who don't, but you're right. They can do anything they want to do.
Yeah, and I also look at like the circumstances, like how many variables led up to that point. Like, did you do everything perfect to try and get this person to where you want them to be or not? And if you didn't, then it's maybe not completely their fault.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I see. Like, and a lot of times, yeah, I didn't do what I should have did to get this person up to speed.
It's very good. So, there's a bunch of questions here that kind of fall in the same vein. Like, where do you see yourself in 20 years? What's next after roofing, or do you even think about that? Like, what do you see in 20 years? Is it even worthwhile thinking that far ahead?
I mean, I hope I'm still in good health and, still having fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I still think, I hope I'm still having fun. I'm capable of doing the things I want to do. Like, those are the 2 things. But if those 2 things are good, I think to some degree I'm still going to be in the construction space. I just don't know to what extent.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want to be the dude like on a boat chilling out. Like I remember we were in Boston, right? And we're like, dude, like that guy's living life.
Yeah.
Right? Like he's like in the harbor, like on his yacht.
Yeah, just sitting out there. He's got his own little foot pedestal with his boat's name on it.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool. Like, yeah. But right now it's not of interest.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe when I'm that dude's age, yeah, like that's pretty fun.
So you're not trying to just buy a little island off the coast of Hawaii and go sit on it?
No.
So we're done with all the questions that we got. I don't have some fancy closeout, you know what I mean? Where I ask, this is my free book. Like, what's your 3 top recommended books? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that if we could close it out, right, in the most appropriate way, I would probably say that everybody is going to walk away. I'm trying to think, what is the person watching this going to be thinking? The person watching this be thinking is just going to be, in my opinion, be thinking, wow, Brennan's Brennan's really incredible, right? Like I think you have a great mindset, and yeah, you're right. You haven't done shit yet. Like Kylie Jenner was a billionaire at 24. Like
Zuckerberg's buying half of Kauai right now.
Yeah, like we haven't done anything, right? Like
Yeah.
we have ego, right? That we always have to keep in check. But I would say that like the best way to close this episode out is just a piece of life advice around how do you maintain a positive mindset.
I mean, maybe that's one downside for me is that I always am very analytical, maybe to a
Fault.
fault. So naturally, if it makes sense, then I'll just go with that. And I don't really see it as like negative or positive. I just think like what's right, and that's also probably a fault. You know, having that black or white thinking. But I do think stoicism has a big thing there.
The obstacle is the way.
Yeah, the obstacle is the way.
Embrace the suck, as David Goggins would say it.
Choose your hard.
Yeah, choose your hard. Everything's hard. Guys, I hope that everybody here watching this episode enjoyed it. I think that I was really excited to get to share Brennan with the world. There's so much more that we could have gone down. I could have taken any one of these questions and gone down like super deep. I hope you enjoyed everything.
I think it was super cool that people actually sent questions. Like,
Yeah.
I was tripping out that there was that many.
Yeah, no, and that was just the ones that I could break into similar like things. So if anybody here didn't get their question answered, you never know. This might happen again. All right, bye. Wow. I was totally blown away by some of the answers that Brennan had. I hope you were too. If you're looking to connect with Brennan in some way online, you can check him out at brennanleong.com, his personal blog. You can also follow brennan.leong on Instagram, check him out on Facebook, or you can go follow Capilli Solar Roofing and Painting at capilliroof.com.